Oh, hello there. I'm Simon Rafe and welcome to Brown Bag Bible Study, the Bible study that you can do in your lunch break. Now, this is an introduction to Scripture, which will give you some information that you might not have known, and it'll encourage you to read the Bible. But most importantly, it's presented in bite-sized pieces, perfect to fit in with our busy lifestyles. Now, every week I'm going to be concentrating on a small part of Scripture, either one of the 73 books of the Bible or a group of related books, and I'll be bringing you interesting facts and information to help you understand it. I'll also be including links to further reading, articles, books, and so forth, which will help you learn to love sacred Scripture even more. This week, the book of 1 Samuel. 1 and 2 Samuel, as the names imply, are part of the same narrative. In the Hebrew Scriptures, they are presented as a single book, not two, and Samuel is a major character. A word should be said about the division of the books of Samuel and the books of Kings in our modern Bibles. When the scribes of Alexandria translated the Hebrew Scriptures into the Greek Septuagint, they divided the text of Samuel and Kings into 4 books, which they called the Books of the Kingdoms. In the Latin Vulgate, these became the Books of the Kings, with 1st and 2nd Kings being what modern Bibles call 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 3rd and 4th Kings being what we know as 1st and 2nd Kings. Now, regardless of what we call the books of Samuel, they tell the story of a tumultuous period in Jewish history. They begin by talking about the birth of Samuel. Hannah is childless, and she promises God she will dedicate her son to him if she has one. God grants her a son, and she keeps her promise, calling him Samuel. Samuel is the last of the judges and the first of the major prophets, and so he straddles 2 eras of Jewish history, both as the last of one group and the first of another, but also as someone who ruled as a judge and established the next form of Jewish government, the monarchy. Samuel leads the Jewish people, but when he appoints his sons as judges in his old age, they do not follow his example, and the people clamour for a king like all the other nations. God reluctantly agrees to this and leads Samuel to find and anoint Saul of the tribe of Benjamin, a tall and handsome man. He becomes king and leads the Jewish people in a series of military campaigns against their enemies, the Philistines. However, Saul's conduct is displeasing to God, and he instructs Samuel to find a replacement. It is at this point the prototype for all Jewish kings enters the narrative, King David. We first see him as a shepherd boy who is skilled at playing the harp, called to the court to soothe the tormented Saul. But David soon proves himself far more than a musician. He becomes a great military champion and leader, defeating Goliath, the giant champion of the Philistines, and winning many more battles. David is successful in everything he does, and this earns the enmity of the jealous Saul, who plots to kill him. David flees, hiding from Saul among the Philistines, even as the king pursues him. When Saul consults God for advice, he gets no answer, perhaps because of his previous unfaithfulness, and so he chooses to go to the witch of Endor, a necromancer, to consult with Samuel. The witch calls up Samuel's spirit, who rebukes Saul for his faithlessness and tells him that he is already condemned. 1 Samuel ends with the death of Saul, attacked by the Philistines, and this makes an acceptable break in the narrative, although it is important to remember the Hebrews did not have this break in their scriptures, and the story went straight into what we would call 2 Samuel. The story in Samuel is very long and complex, and I've really barely scratched the surface here. Please take some time to read it yourself and the additional materials to better understand it. There are, however, a number of interesting themes to focus on in particular. God's reluctance to provide a king for the Jews should be noted. They want to be like the other nations, but God does not want that for them. They think they need a king to lead them militarily, but they do not realize their military defeats are not due to poor leadership, but to faithlessness. Samuel's sons failing to behave appropriately is another example of this. Saul is punished because of his refusal to wipe out the Amalekites, and this should be contrasted with the faithfulness of Abraham in Genesis, as well as Joshua's willingness to fight God's battles. The first book of Samuel tells a primarily military history, a war story of conquest and violence with great leaders such as Saul and David, and meditating on this aspect of salvation history is important. Remember, it is from the house of David that Jesus Christ comes, and so it is correct to see Jesus as a victorious king leading his people to victory. That's all for this time. Next time, we're going to be looking at the story of David's rule in the second book of Samuel. Until then, I'm Simon Rafe, and God bless. To learn more about the place of Scripture in the lives of Catholic Christians, I urge you to read Pope Benedict's apostolic exhortation Verbum Domini. The Pope encourages all Catholics to read, learn and love Scripture and to understand its relation to the Church. A link to this exhortation is included in the reading materials for every episode of Brown Bag Bible Study. Just click the link over there.